Hi, how you doing? Happy New Year. It's January the 1st and I thought I'd take a little moment to record a video for you. What I'd like to talk about in this particular video is the danger of making assumptions when interpreting historical texts within HEMA. Now, what we're trying to do is we're trying to take a written work, sometimes without any pictures, and we're trying to create from that a historical, effective and authentic system of combat. Now, if you're just interested in learning how to fight, then by all means have a skim through it, take what you want. Doesn't matter, you don't have to make sure you're getting it right. But if what you're trying to do is recreate the system as it was, so recreate it as authentically as possible, then it's absolutely vital that you make sure that what you're taking from it, the way you interpret what's written, is actually correct. Now, there's a big risk when looking at interpreting a HEMA system to assume that because it's using similar terminology to another system, that it must be describing the same things as that other system. And in a lot of cases, that's a fairly safe assumption. If you're looking at systems from the same time period, if you're looking at systems from the same area, then that's okay. You'll probably get away with that. But if you're not, then that's a very dangerous game to play. You can take a word, a concept described in one system, and give it the meaning from a different system. And you may end up with something that works very well, but there's no guarantee that what you're doing is actually what's described. And the reason that I'm bringing this up and I'm talking about this is because George Silver, in his works Paradoxes of Defence and Brief Instructions upon My Paradoxes of Defence, uses a lot of terminology that's also used in other systems. And it's quite common for people to simply assume that because he's using the word measure, then he means what somebody else means when they use the word measure, or because he uses the word time, that he means the same as what somebody else means when they use the word time. And often that's not the case. Now, one of the most obvious examples of that is that Silver describes 4 guards that rapier fighters often use. And he names those guards and he describes the positions they're in. Now, people that were writing sources on rapier combat were using those names, but they weren't using the guards that Silver described. Now, what that either means is that Silver had got it wrong, and that's perfectly possible. He's not a rapier instructor, he's not a rapier treatise, so it's not a big deal if he gets stuff to do with rapiers wrong. Or it means that there were other people teaching in different ways, using those guards in different ways. So what we can't do is look at the name of the guard and assume we know what it means, because we've now got 2 different definitions of that guard. The same goes for the word measure. Now, Silver uses the word measure, a lot of other people use the word measure. Later on, people are using the word measure to mean the distance between 2 fighters in which you can attack them without having to step. Okay? You can be within measure or you can be without measure, and that's fine, and that's a nice valid definition of the word measure. But Silver doesn't define it that way, and so if we use that definition and bolt it onto Silver, what we're going to end up with is something that isn't Silver. I've got my Kindle reader here, and I've got on it the copies of Brief Instructions and Paradoxes of Defence that I've put up on the Kindle store. So what I'd like to do is read you exactly what Silver says about measure, so you can see how different it is. He says, "The second governor is measure. Measure is the better to know how to make your space true to defend yourself or to offend your enemy." So what we can see is he's not describing a range, if you like. He's not describing the space at which I can attack you without having to step, or you can attack me without having to step. Clearly he's not saying that. He's saying the better to know how to make your space true. So measure is obviously related to understanding, it's related to judgment. And we know that if we've read Silver's Four Governors, that measure is very much related to judgment. So we can see that this term measure has 2 very different definitions in different systems. So please don't make assumptions about what terminology means without spending the time to look to see if that source has actually defined that terminology for you. Because it may well be that what they're trying to describe using that word isn't what somebody else was trying to describe using the same word. So don't do that, and you'll get a much better, clearer and more authentic interpretation of the system. Thank you.